Republican candidate for Attorney General to tell us a little bit about himself. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Thurman. First off, it is quite an honor and a privilege to be with all of you this evening. This is kind of like a homecoming for me. First, I've got to say something. I have been coming here for 7 years, and during that time, every year I call my wife, and I have tried to convince her that we spend all day long in this room parsing over matters of law and constitutional importance, and in the evenings we break free to go to the local soup kitchen and serve those less fortunate ourselves. Every morning at 7 a.m., Solicitor Myers leads us in a breakout Bible study, and then we work again till midnight the following evening. Of course, every time she called, all she ever heard was clinking glasses, pouring drinks, and band music. And I tried to convince her we actually do work here. So, honey, you're going to get it. By the way, my wife Jennifer is with me tonight. This is the first time in 7 years she's been allowed to join us at the Solicitor's Conference. I know y'all won't make a liar out of it. First off, it is truly a privilege to be here tonight. It's kind of funny. I'm looking out over this. It's like a bunch of Baptists here. Everyone's in the back row. Are we that scary? Listen, I would have been on that back row too if I were here. I've been one of you, and I've sat out there, and I know right now what's on your minds is where you're going to be eating tonight. So I've learned something in giving speeches and talking to folks. Don't ever stand between people in eating and people in leaving. So I will try to make this as brief as possible. Many of you over the last year have heard me talk about why I want to be your Attorney General. For some of you, you've heard this speech once. Some of you have heard it twice, and sometimes you've heard it 10 times. For those of you that have heard this speech already, and it's, by the way, when I say speech, it's going to be very quick. This isn't for you. This is for those of you who have not gotten a chance to know me. I look out among this crowd right now, and I see people that have become old friends and dear friends of mine, people with whom I see once a year, and it's like we just picked up from the day before. Some of you I saw when I was coming through your circuit in your county when I was an Assistant Attorney General, and you were very good to us in our office, and every time I came there, you always made me feel like we had home court advantage. So I want to personally thank all of you out there who have had me in your courtrooms, and you really made this profession worth fighting for, one of the reasons I'm running. There are 3 passions that have compelled me to run to be your Attorney General. Passion for prosecution, passion for public service, and a passion for leadership. All 3 of these passions are interrelated. They correlate to one another, but they're in no particular order. First, I want to talk about my passion for public service. Public service for me did not begin when I started running for Attorney General. It began half my life ago. I come from a family where all of the Wilson boys, my 3 brothers and I, were all Eagle Scouts. I come from a family where all of us served in the military. My brother Ad and I have served the combat tour in Iraq. In the late 90s, I was a drug enforcement analyst, intelligence analyst for the Drug Enforcement Administration. And of course, subsequent to law school, I got to serve the late Honorable Judge Westbrook, and then went on to serve our solicitor in my home county, Donnie Myers. I was assistant solicitor there for several years, with the exception of a break in service to serve our country in Iraq. I went to serve as Assistant Attorney General, where I worked with some of the finest people I've ever met. And then I left there to go into private practice, and now I'm running to hopefully be your Attorney General. But public service was the first passion that compelled me to run, that desire to want to serve people out there. The second passion I have is my passion for prosecution. Now, I always exemplify my passion for prosecution by telling one story that I handpicked because it really truly affected me. Every one of you out there that's ever tried a case and bonded with the victim probably has a story. You could stand up right now and probably tell that story right off the cuff, and it would probably affect the way you approach your profession as being a prosecutor. The story I picked was several years ago. I prosecuted a case. Some of you out there may be in your circuit. You may recall this case. But this case really affected me. A young woman who had been sexually molested over a period of 4 years, from age 12 to 15. When she was old enough to kind of figure out what was going on, she came forward and reported to the authorities. That case found its way to my desk. I went with the Attorney General's office. I prosecuted that case. At the end of an 8-day trial, the jury came back with a guilty verdict, and then the judge sentenced this man to 18 years. As this young woman, who was now 19 years old, was leaving the courtroom, I was following her, and we were following out the defendant who was being led out in shackles. She began to cry, and I asked her, "Why are you crying?" I didn't understand why she was crying, because we had fought so hard for this case. This was a very difficult case. And before I tell you what she said, for those of you who don't already know this story, before I tell you what she said, it's important for me to tell you that the man that had sexually molested her for 4 years was not only a former police officer, but was the girl's grandfather. For 4 years, he had told her that you can tell somebody, but no one's going to believe you. They'll take you away if you do. And they're not going to take you away because they're not going to believe you to begin with. They're good because I'm a cop and you're a child. And this young woman looked up at me and she told me that. She told me that's what he had said. And she said, Alan, today, the reason I'm crying is for the first time in my life, my adult life, I am not a victim. I'm a survivor. It was at that point that I realized that I played a very small role. What I was able to do was to work with court officials, members of the solicitor's office, members of the attorney general's office, deputies, investigators, victims advocates, and all the people that come together to bring a case to fruition. I got to play a small role in taking the power from the bad guy and empowering the good guy. Giving that young lady a shot at living a life of not being a victim. We've all seen victims of those kind of cases. Sometimes the after story doesn't turn out so well. I don't know what happened to that young woman, but I know this, that I worked with a team of people who were able to give her back a shot of living a normal life. We took the power from the bad guy, we empowered the good guy. That is what we do as prosecutors. And that is what I want to do as your Attorney General. The third passion, we've talked about prosecution, we've talked about public service. I want to talk to you about leadership. Now, all leaders are managers, but not all managers are leaders. That's the first thing I learned as a young second lieutenant in the United States Army. I've had the opportunity to serve with some of the greatest of our generation, those young men and women who served in Afghanistan and Iraq. My first lesson in leadership didn't come later in life. It came very early as a young second lieutenant. I spent my first day, I walked into the drill hall floor of our armory, and a young captain walked up to me. He was my direct supervisor, and he said, Lieutenant Wilson, I want you to get out in that motor pool. I want you to turn a wrench. I want you to get hot. I want you to get sweaty, dirty, cold. I want you to suffer the way that those soldiers are suffering. Get out there and let that young private or that young sergeant that works for you, let them teach you how to do their job. And bear in mind, lieutenants are about 22 years old. You got sergeants and E7s that are about 40, 45 years old. So it's kind of an awesome responsibility and a task to be able to go talk to someone who's got socks older than you. At the same time, they're saluting you and calling you sir. You have to approach that leadership position with a great deal of humility and understanding that they might know what they're talking about. Be willing to learn from them just as you're willing to lead them. That officer then told me, he says, Lieutenant Wilson, when you go to the field, you will always be the last one to go to bed. You will always be the first one to wake up in the morning. You will always be the last one to eat chow. As a young second lieutenant, I didn't understand what leadership was about at that time. I said, hey, I'm an officer. I'm a leader. There's supposed to be perks and privileges. You're supposed to have all these titles heaped upon you. But I learned really fast as a young leader, and as I matured and grew and progressed in my career as an Army officer, I learned that leadership is not about perks and privileges. It's about service. It's about serving those who have placed you in a position of authority, a position of responsibility. It's about being willing to put their needs ahead of yours. That's what true leadership is about. That officer also told me something that I came to realize on a hot August day in Iraq in 2004. He said, always lead by example. Be willing to not just say, hey, go take that hill, follow me, we'll take that hill together. I have managed prosecution teams in the courtroom. I have managed soldiers on the battlefield. I have never asked anyone to do something that I was not able or willing to do myself. In August of 2004, I was leading a convoy through downtown Mosul when a loud explosion occurred. The back end of my Humvee was blown off, and the men that were in the vehicles to the front behind me rushed into a kill zone. For those of you with military experience, when an enemy attacks a convoy, they do it to immobilize it and then open fire when you assist the demobilized vehicle. Thankfully, that day that did not happen. Those young men rushed into the kill zone. We pulled the folks out of the burning wreckage and were able to get them to safety. The following night, we came under sniper fire. And I was up there with those soldiers. At the end of that convoy, which is 2,400 miles, those soldiers came to me and they said something to me that was very humbling because they were the ones that were out there taking the shots. They said, Captain Wilson, we appreciate you and your leadership. We appreciate you being willing to stand out there on the line and be shot at with us. That is the same type of determination, the same type of leadership I plan to bring to the Attorney General's office. Another thing about being a prosecutor, and I have a very good friend here running for this office too, but there's something I need to explain that most of you already know. Having a prosecutor as your Attorney General is not just about that Attorney General going into the courtroom. In fact, that's not what it's about at all. What it's about is about having empathy and understanding to know what the needs and the wants and desires, to understand the logistical concerns, how the case management system works or doesn't work, to understand where funding is at fault, to have to make important decisions like whether or not you're going to prosecute a governor. There has not been an attorney general in this state in over 70 years who at one point in their career did not have some type of prosecution experience. That's important, ladies and gentlemen. It's important to have someone who's gone before you and understands what it is that you need, who understands that what you do is a job that is usually thankless and you're overworked and underpaid. I have that empathy. I have that understanding. Before you can be a general, you had to once be a lieutenant in the trenches. You have to understand how policies up here affect people on the trenches. I've been there. I've been the recipient of policies, some good, some bad, but I've been there with you. I've had the agony of defeat in the courtroom, and I've had the exhilaration of a guilty verdict where I saw a victim made whole. I've gone out and I've tried cases that seemed impossible and some that seemed like slam dunks. You never knew what you were going to get. I understand where you're coming from. I could sit here for the next 10 minutes, and I'm going to close in the next minute and a half because I know you want to get to eat, but I want to close with this. This race is very, very important. And I'm not going to go into the policy of what I want to do as your Attorney General. Most of you already know what it's about. This position is very important. I want to be your Attorney General. As I travel this state, every time I stand before a crowd like this, I tell people that I consider you potential employers. I'm asking you for a job. And I'm going to make myself accessible to you, and I'm going to be there for you when you need me. I've spoken with the solicitors. I've spoken with all 46 sheriffs. I'm happy to tell you that during the primary, when I ran for the Republican nomination, I was endorsed by 2/3 of the sheriffs of the state of South Carolina, both Republican and Democrat. In fact, more Democrats endorsed me than Republicans. This is a nonpartisan position that you get through a partisan process. Politics should not matter and will not matter. What's important to me is that you're taken care of, that your solicitors are taken care of, that your local line law enforcement officers are taken care of, and I will be there for you. You're going to go home in the next 36 days and wake up. You're going to have the opportunity to make a decision. I'm asking each and every one of you for your vote, for your prayers, and for your support. You've had a chance to listen to several candidates here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, picking a candidate's like shopping for a car. You kick the tires, you look under the hood, you drive the car around the block. If you like the car, you take the car, you make it your car. Do that today. Do your research, kick the tires, ask me questions. I'm going to be with you all night, I'll be with you all day tomorrow. Ask the questions, see what's under the hood. You want to know where someone's going, see where they've been. That's what it's about. If you like what you've seen here tonight, I'll be honored to have your vote and your support. If I'm not your candidate, go with the other guy. You won't hurt my feelings. But either way, I look forward to serving you in January. Thank you. God bless you. And let's have a good time this weekend. Thank you for what you do for our state.
President Jerry Peace.